I was reading when Alan Rickman played it in the 80s. He said it's that moment when you start All the World's a Stage where the audience just goes quiet, because it's the first time they've really heard, oh, this is the bit that we know.
Yeah.
And actually, even I was practicing it the other day, and my mother-in-law, who is not in any way a Shakespeare aficionado, quoted along the entire speech with me. Wow. So yeah, it really is one that people know.
Do you start with those speeches, or do you forget about them for a bit?
Personally, that's where I started with that one, because there's so little of the play is in verse, and that's a moment where it suddenly hits into iambic pentameter. And as an actor, anything that's in verse just is full of clues. And it's a really interesting bit of iambic pentameter, because as it works through the 7 ages, there are 2 ages in the middle that are very irregular in their verse, where the heart rate of the verse peaks quite significantly, and then it comes back down into a much more level bit. So looking at where those peaks were, as it's the lover and the soldier, it seems like a great place to start. What do those 2 stages of man, human, person, that's another conversation, what do they mean to this character? And that felt like a good way in.
There is an argument that she doesn't have permission to say exactly what she wants to say, but she certainly has an ability philosophically to go somewhere else,
yeah,
to the other character, and to see things more broadly, certainly.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes from, isn't it? That ability to, the speech is famous for unpacking humanity in its sort of broadest form, but that isn't a journey for everyone. And I think Jacques sees herself as an outsider within that framework to some degree, doesn't she?
Absolutely, but desperately trying to make connection. That's what's glorious about playing a part like this, that every time Jacques comes on stage, Jacques is trying to make connections, yeah, be it with Touchstone, be it with the Duke, be it with, and then Orlando and Rosalind. And I love the way that Shakespeare's structured these interactions, particularly with Orlando and Rosalind, being before they both then have a very optimistic wooing scene where they're falling in love. That he puts Jacques in at the beginning to have a misconnection. But she's just wandering around the forest trying to find someone who understands. And it's very easy to feel that feeling that no one quite understands how bleak things are.
Well, I guess it's more interesting to play as an actor, isn't it, as well, rather than blanket pessimism, that you're looking actively to break out of, whatever that is, that a degree of depression maybe, or an understanding of the world that she can't shake off.
Yeah, a hyper understanding, I think Jacques would argue.
Yeah.
Which, if you're not depressed by that, you haven't understood it properly.
Yeah.
And also just a desperate need for someone to take your hand and say, it'll be okay, come with me, stay.
Yeah.
And nobody does, because that's frightening and disconcerting to be around. That sort of that mindset of everything's awful, and we're all screwed.
Yeah. In terms of the 7 ages as a woman, does it change your perspectives? Does it change how you sort of approach it at all, do you think?
Well, it's a decision, isn't it? Whether you take this 7 ages of man as being mankind, or whether we look specifically at man and what the journey that's set out for men, and how we talked about toxic masculinity, about how this idea of you have to go through and seek the bubble reputation, you have to, have your strange oaths and be bearded and sigh like furnace, and if you're not that, then you're not a man. But that essentially leads to nothing. Which feels, I was thinking about that this morning, that's the end of it suddenly feels very sort of prototype for Hamlet. You could easily put on the end of that as a consummation devoutly to be wished. It definitely feels like the first stage of something.
There are some speeches you're like, why is this famous? And this one, we've found so many different ways that you can play it already, that you sort of go, well, it deserves its fame, really, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Yeah, it really does. And it's it's accessible for everything from a 5-year-old just working out how you get older through to ancient people like me and you, Paul.
Exactly.
All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms. And then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face creeping like snail, unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress' eyebrow. And then a soldier, full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honour, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly, with good cape on lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances, and so he plays his part. The sixth age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice turning again towards childish treble pipes and whistles in its sound. Last scene of all, that ends this strange, eventful history, is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything.